Hey everyone, it's Rabbi Shmuel Polin. Great to be back with you for the Light Unto the Nations show. We have a book for sale. It's called All In for God. You'll be doing yourself a huge favor when you get this book because it's going to take care of those doubts that you have about God. It's going to take care of those doubts you have about your life, your life's meaning, and all the things that the atheists bring up to try to shatter our belief in God. They will not be able to do that anymore once you have this book and the information contained in this book. So as soon as this video is over, go over to allinforgod.com, allinforgod.com, and pick up the book. And we're making it into a course, so pick up the course to be more accurate. As you can see, I'm all doled up. I'm spiffed up. I am looking good. I have got my kapata, my long Hasidic frock, and my tie. This is a secular thing. This is a Hasidic thing. And I've got it all together as one in this awesome package. And the reason I'm so dolled up is because it is a holiday for my Hasidic sect. It's called Yud Shvat, the 10th day of Shvat. And we have to understand that there was a dynasty of Chabad Rebbes, of Chabad Hasidic masters. It all started with the Baal Shem Tov in the 1700s, who started to reveal the Kabbalah that I'm teaching you now. And he did that for decades. And then came the Alter Rebbe, the first of a 7-generation dynasty of Chabad Rebbeim, Chabad Hasidic masters. And the sixth in that dynasty died in 1950. And that same year, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, took over the mantle of leadership in 1950, and this is now 70 years exactly from when he took on the leadership. And it was very interesting how he took on the leadership. There is a informal discourse and a formal discourse. The informal discourse is just the Rebbe talking and giving words of inspiration and words of insight on the weekly Torah portion and on other events that are going on at the time. That's an informal talk. And then there's the formal talk, which is what only a Hasidic master can give. There's only one Hasidic master per generation. Only a Hasidic master can give a formal talk, which is called a mimer. And that's when he closes his eyes and everyone sings a special tune. And he goes into a meditative state and he connects with God. And then he begins to speak. And what he speaks are God's actual words. And you can see these maimarim, you can see these formal discourses in the books. They're transcribed, and it's unbelievable what comes out of the Rebbe's mouth. You can just find meaning and layers of meaning on top of layers of meaning until you come to really believe this actually is God speaking through the Rebbe, just like God spoke through Moses' mouth. And I want to tell you a little bit about the Lubavitcher Rebbe because almost everything that I have either comes from him or is coded by him. He was educated in the Sorbonne. He was an engineer, and he did covert work for the United States government. People from the government would show up at his synagogue at 4 a.m. to whisk him away, to help them deal with a problem with a nuclear reactor or something like that. And he had patents for ships that he created, and those became a source of income for him, and so he didn't have to really worry about money, and he was free to change the world for the rest of his life. There's bookshelves upon bookshelves of his talks, which became books. So how many people, when they just talk, it can become a book if you transcribe it? Not that many, but that was the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Everything he spoke was transcribed. His letters that he wrote became books, and so there's shelves upon shelves of his books where he gives the inner meaning behind every verse in the Bible. He touched on every page of Talmud with a depth and a practical bent that nobody has ever seen before. He would talk for 4 hours or 6 hours on the Sabbath without notes, completely without notes. He would spend all Sunday standing up, giving out dollars and blessings to people that would pass by just to catch a glimpse of him and catch a blessing. and he would spend all night until 3 in the morning, depending on what period of his life it was. But sometimes it was every single night, every single weeknight. He would be up till 3 in the morning talking to people who needed advice, who needed counsel. And one of the most amazing things that he did is he sent out his students all throughout the world, and in every state and every country in the world, there is a representative of the Lubavitcher Rebbe that becomes a home for the Jewish people in that place. There's always a place to go for a hot meal or a bed. In every country, you just have to have the book that tells you where the Chabad rabbis are, and you look it up and you find the Chabad rabbi there. And that is a network that has never been rivaled by anyone. They say wherever there is Coca-Cola, there is Chabad. There is a Chabad Rebbe. So the only thing that can compete with us is Coca-Cola for what the Lubavitcher Rebbe did. And he made mitzvah tanks. He made these big RVs with trying to get people to do the 613 commandments. He was totally dedicated to the 613 commandments, and he made 10 that we should focus on, so we could really just sink our teeth into 10 of them. 10 mitzvahs, they were called the mitzvahs, the campaigns, and they had RVs promoting these campaigns, and they were going around Manhattan and other big cities and putting tefillin on people, putting the prayer boxes on people. And he's really incredible. He gave so many blessings and did so many miracles. And I want to read to you one story about the Lubavitcher Rebbe and a miracle that he did. And this is called An Irish Kid with a Jewish Name. The author says that he heard the story from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Leibel Groner. And just so you know, he was called the Lubavitcher Rebbe because he was from the town called Lubavitch in Ukraine. And his real name was Menachem Mendel. So we'll keep that in mind as we read the story. The author, who is Tuvia Bolton, says that he heard the story from the Lubavitcher Rebbe's secretary, Rabbi Groner. A woman from the Chabad Lubavitch community in Brooklyn was pulled over by an NYC traffic cop for some traffic violation. Standing outside her open car window and watching her search for her license and registration papers, the officer caught the sight of a picture of the Lubavitcher Rebbe in her open purse. "Excuse me, ma'am," he asked, "are you one of the followers of this rabbi?" "Yes," she replied. "Well, in that case, I'm not going to give you a ticket." He closed his ticket book and continued, "Do you know why? Because this rabbi," he pointed to the picture she was now holding in her hand, "did a very big miracle for me." "Well," said the grateful woman, "since you aren't giving me a ticket, I have time to hear the story." The policeman smiled and said, "It's my favorite story, but I haven't told it to many Jewish people. In fact, I think you are the first." The cars were whizzing behind him, and he had to raise his voice slightly. The story goes something like this. "I used to be in the police escort that once a week escorted the rabbi to the Montefiore Cemetery, where the Rebbe's father-in-law and predecessor, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, is interred." He says, "I got to know some of the young men who accompanied the Rebbe, and I learned a lot of things. They are very friendly people, which you probably already know. And we talked a lot while the rabbi was inside praying. Well, one day I saw that all the fellows there were talking excitedly to each other, so I asked them what happened. So they told me that the rabbi does a lot of miracles for people, but today he did a miracle that was really something. I didn't even ask what was the miracle they were talking about. I just asked them if the rabbi helps non-Jews as well. Sure, they said, the Rebbe helps anyone who asks. Why, do you need something? So I told him, this young fellow, that me and my wife had been married for 9 years with no children. And a week ago, the doctors told us that we had no chance. We spent a lot of money on treatments with all sorts of big professors. We were running around like crazy for the last 6 or 7 years. And now they told us that they had tried everything and there is no chance. You can imagine how broken we were. He said that his wife cried all the time and he started crying himself. So this young man tells him, listen, the next time that you escort the Rebbe to the cemetery, stand near the door of his car And when he gets out, ask him for a blessing. People used to do this all the time, to catch the Rebbe when he's leaving his car for a blessing. So that is what I did. The next time he was in the escort, he stood by his door, and when he got out, he said to him, "Excuse me, Rabbi, do you only bless Jewish people or non-Jews too?" So the rabbi looked at me like a good friend. It was really amazing, and said that he tries to help anyone that he can. So I told him, he says, that what the doctors had said, and he said I should write down on a piece of paper my name and my father's name together with my wife's and her father's names, and he would pray for us. So I did it, he says. My hands were shaking so much he couldn't even write, but he did it. And you know what? He says, my wife became pregnant 9 months later, and she gave birth to a baby boy. The doctors went crazy. They couldn't figure it out. And when I told them that it was all the Rebbe's blessings, they just scratched their heads and said, wow, I felt like the champion of the world. But here's the good part. Do you know what we called him? What name we gave our baby boy? Just guess. We called him Mendel after the rabbi. At first, my wife didn't like the name because it's not an American name, but I said, no, we're calling him Mendel. Each time we say his name, we'll remember that if it wasn't for the rabbi, this boy wouldn't have been born. But when our parents heard the name, they really objected. They said, with a name like that, all the kids will think he's a Jew or something, and they will just call him names and be cruel to him. Why make the kids suffer for no reason? That's just what I want, I said to them. When he comes home and says that the other kids called him names and beat him up because he has a Jewish name, I'll tell him that I want him to learn from those other kids how not to behave. They hate the Jews for no reason, but you should love the Jews. You should help the Jews. You just tell them that without the Jewish rabbi called Mendel, you wouldn't be here at all, and then maybe they'll all start thinking differently too. And there are tons of stories like this. Check out Chabad.org, search for stories of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Chabad Rebbe, and you will find a plethora of stories where the Rebbe helped people have kids, help people with cancer, help people with all kinds of problems. He was really one of the most amazing people that ever lived. And he even has a day on the calendar, according to the U.S. government, Education Day was dedicated to him and was made because of him, because of his extreme emphasis on education. So I hope I gave you a little bit about the Lubavitcher Rebbe and why we're celebrating right now. The holiday starts tonight and it goes through tomorrow. And everyone goes to the Rebbe's grave site. God willing, I'll be going. And maybe one day you'll come with me. I bless you all with only good things. You should enjoy this Yud Shvat and celebrate it along with me. Celebrate the Lubavitcher Rebbe's life. Celebrate his legacy. And use it to help you become more observant of the 10 campaigns that he promoted and all the other 613 commandments for Jews and 7 no-hide laws for non-Jews. Rededicate yourself to these 7 no-hide laws. Research the 7 no-hide laws. The Rebbe was very big into spreading the knowledge of the no-hide laws because that is what keeps civilization together. So happy Yud Shvat and God bless.